Whether you watched him in Sliders as Professor Maximilian Arturo, or whether you, of course, grew up with him as Salah in Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade, the Indiana Jones films, or any of his other amazing roles from his incredibly long and impressive filmography, or maybe from a little character named Gimli from Lord of the Rings, you definitely love John Rhys-Davies.
You're very kind and very silly. Well, thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be back in Canada. They're very smart people and very warm and very friendly, and it's a joy to be back. You were going to ask me questions, weren't you?
I think I'll ask you one or two off the top, and then we should have a, is the microphone in the aisle here? I was told it would be in the aisle. If it's not, maybe what we'll do is just, did you point up there, sir? Did you see a microphone? Oh, there's a microphone at the front. Okay, great. So maybe what we'll do is we'll get you to line up with audience questions at the front here. And then, yeah, we've got an hour to chat with John. I want to ask you first, so John, right off the top, I mentioned that your filmography is long and impressive. In looking it up, it just amazes me how much work you've done. So looking back, obviously we're going to talk about Gimli, but is there a role that really sticks out to you as one that you saw as a turning point within your career?
The two things. One, before I ask you a question, yes, there is a lot of work. I needed the practice. I suppose there are quite a lot of would-be or real young aspiring actors here today. And we always dream about the breakthrough moment. And, you know, it really does exist. The class that I was in at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art had a number of very, very gifted people, and most of them got a good break. They got a television series, which led to another television series. Some of them made films, some of them went into the theatre and stayed in the theatre all their lives. One of the most gifted fellows, and he really was gifted, just never had the break. He's still working as a working actor. He was 62, 63 now. But he's never had the public recognition or the break that the rest of us had. And not because he didn't have the talent. He had an abundance of talent. He had the looks, he had the personality. He had the intellect and the intellectual curiosity. And he's a good man, too. I suppose the point I'm making is that almost of every profession, there's a sort of structure that you can go up and probably succeed in. There is no reason at all why anyone should ever employ you as an actor. The analogy that I'd like to make is, if you think that you want to be an actor, let me pose this question to you. I look at myself now, at the age of 16, 17, whatever you are, and say, is there anything in me that leads me to believe that in 4 years' time, I could be running or jumping in an Olympic final? Because that's the sort of challenge you're setting yourself as an actor. But we can't look at ourselves that way because we know we've always wanted to do it, you know, and we see ourselves succeeding. The damnable thing is there is no reason or justification that will make you succeed when others don't. And that is the damnable thing about acting. There is no security. There is no dead men's shoes. There's no automatic promotion. To answer the real question that you asked, what was the breakthrough moment? I phoned my then agent up in England. He'd picked me up from drama school in my last year. And I phoned him up and said, look, the bank manager's down my neck at the moment. I owe them 60 quid. And he said, leave it with me, John. And he called me back about the following day. He said, listen, I've got a little gig for you for London Weekend Television. It's only £110, but it'll get you out of the bank manager's grasp. And he said, it's got to be an exact reconstruction of an interrogation of a villain. A villain who was caught and traced to be the man who put another fellow, a man called Heibner, up to murdering a housewife in Golders Green. And they virtually caught this guy single-handed. And the way it was one of the very first times that they recorded a cross-examination. So they had every word verbatim. But if they were going to use it in the television program, it really had to be said verbatim. So it was a really hard study. And the more I read it, and the more I thought about it, the more I hated this bastard. He tried everything. He bullied, he cajoled, it's not me, it's part of a bigger mystery, I mean, there's a whole conspiracy, which I'm just the smallest bloody cog that you can imagine, what you ought to be doing is looking further up the chain, eh? Yeah? I mean, a lot of villains around, and some of them are in the government, He was an utter shit. And the temptation with all actors fall in love with their characters, and most characters we can play out of love. But you can do it the other way as well. You can play it out of hate. And I played every vicious, venal, corrupt, sadistic, miserable, underhand, disgusting character of this animal that I could. And I did it really quite well, but it was only about 10 minutes as part of this program. There was a casting lady, Maud Spector. She came home from the theatre early. She'd seen the first act and realized that the answer to her problem wasn't there. And she came home and she flicked on the television set, and she caught 10 minutes of this little piece. And she called my agent the next day and said, who is this young actor? I want to see him as soon as possible. I went in and she coached me. I went to the first reading. I made so many apologies for myself as why I wasn't right for this part. It was painful. I went to the second. I went to the third. And finally, they said, we want him. And she said to me, now listen, John, if you play this part as well as I think you will play it, you will never have to look for another job again. A slight exaggeration, but not much. And it was a wonderful character in a piece called Shogun. And it was... I mean, it was a turnaround piece. Shogun was the second most successful mini-series of all time in North America. Most of you are eating sushi on a regular basis because of Shogun. It became fashionable to eat Shogun in 1980 or 81 when it got shown, because that's what Richard Chamberlain was having to eat. But that's what I mean by just serendipity. And if you're going to be an actor, though it's true of many other things in life as well, be born healthy and be born lucky. Because if you haven't got luck, nothing will happen. And if you have it, even if you don't deserve it, some measure of success will come to you. That was very long-winded, wasn't it?
That was interesting. And so sorry about this, folks, but we set up a mic here, so can you just stay in the same spot in line and shift to this mic, just so John can see the folks who are asking the questions? Okay, great. So yeah, we can take the first question from the audience.
Doth God exact day labor light denied? First question goes to the person who can tell me where that comes from. God, don't you read Milton in the provinces?
Hello, sir.
Hello, Mr. Davies. Thanks again for the autograph. I really appreciate it. Of all the people you work with, is there anyone you hadn't worked with that you would like to?
Everybody hear that question at the back? It was just, is there anybody that John hasn't worked with that he'd like to?
A lot of dead ones that I'd love to have worked with. You know, you have to be very sanguine about these things because actors bump into each other every 10 years, and we tend to work with each other every 10 years. We're a small peripatetic lot, we working actors. There are a number of wonderful, particularly younger actors, whom, you know, I shall probably be long dead before they get round to working with me, but I don't really want to name names, to be honest with you. I never worked with Olivier, though I met him. I did work with Gielgud. Alan Bedell, whom you won't have heard of, but those of you who saw Shogun will have seen that manic Jesuit superior. Bedell was the most, next to Olivier, the greatest stage actor I've ever seen. Electrifying, just magnetic. But there are, you know, there are tens of thousands of interesting actors. Most actors are sort of interesting in a funny sort of way sometimes. There are very few actors that you simply go, oh, God, what a waste of time. I have worked with one or two of them.
Care to name names?
Once. No, they sort of come and go. They tend to go quicker than they come, actually. But I guess when I was at Stratford, we used to go on the stage at night, and we would look around the stage, and we would look for a hungry pair of eyes, and we would break the natural rhythm that we have acquired for the part, and we would suddenly spit out a line straight at that person, and, you know, with real violence. And the actors who were really alive would go, right, you son of a bitch, boom, straight back to the next person. And suddenly you would have 5 or 6 really dangerous men quarreling over the bones of England. And you could feel the temperature in the audience going down and people leaning forward in their seats. And that's really what actors live for, are those moments when it is so alive that it is palpable. You know, there is a real threat there. Send me your prisoners with all speedy means, or you shall hear from me in such a kind as will displease you. Send me your prisoners.
Absolutely.
Or you'll hear of it. You know. That was really badly done as well. Sorry. Thank God for indulgent audiences. But the point I'm getting is, we are the most privileged people. We get to do what we would do for free and find other people to pay us for doing it. That's really one of the great secrets of life to one of you young people here. Really, that's really one of the 2 important secrets that you should all learn. Right? Let me repeat it. Find something that you love doing and would do for free, and then make sure that people pay you to do it. If you can master that, half of life is sorted out for you. Unfortunately, there are younger people in the audience, and I can't tell you about the second half. But there is another note, actually, that I learned from being in our business. I think everyone should work in the film industry, even if only for 6 months. Why? Because most of us, I will lay 90% of us in this room, are our own worst enemies. Like me in that early audition for Shogun, explaining why I couldn't do justice to the part. That's not my job. My job is to be as best as I can and try and get it. If you work in the film industry and the director says to you, right, I'm going to shoot that way, 2 o'clock this afternoon we're doing that scene, I want 2 zebra in the background. There's no point in saying to him, sir, we're in Tristan da Cunha, and there is no zebra to be had in 5,000 miles. Your job during the lunch break is to go and buy 2 donkeys and have them painted and put in the background by 2 o'clock. And then you will go to the director and say, got those zebra for you, Mr. Right in the background over there. Zebras? Whose stupid idea was that? I'm not shooting that way anyway. That's the... But the point I'm making is, we are not in the film business interested in your reasons for not being able to do what we've asked you to do. Not interested. You can't do it? Move on. Somebody else will do it. And if we could all get that into our brains and apply it to other parts of our lives, you know, we would be smarter and more fulfilled and more successful people. Don't put obstacles in your own way. Your answer to every question is, right, let's see if we can make that work. Get into that mindset and you will be awfully successful. Far more than the old hack who is preaching to you tonight.
Next question.
Sliders. A big fan of the show Sliders. When I was reading up on it after the series was over, I was reading about a bunch of stuff that happened in the background, problems with producers and whatnot, to the point where there was conflicts and they were starting to kill off characters, and it seemed like there was some sort of power struggle. Your character, for example, was given an ailment and then his planet was blown up. What happened?
Do you know how hard it is to get fired from a television show in LA? You've really got to work at it, because once you let them know that you want to go, they cling to you, because there must be some secret that you have that they don't know about. Sliders is still an open wound to me. We could have had, it could have been the Fox Network's Star Trek franchise. We could have gone anywhere in space, we could have gone anywhere in time. And we ended up just copying everybody else's show. We did the Twisters show. The difference was with our Twister that instead of it starting small at the bottom and working big like a Twister does, ours was different because it started big at the bottom and worked up, you know, like an inverted ice cream cone. We did Tremors, we did Night of the Living Dead. We even used the same masks that they'd done for the film of The Island of Dr. Moreau. You know, I have worked with real writers. I mean, men with imaginations and an understanding of what they're doing. You know, when I'm given a script and it talks about the atom bomb and putting spectacles on the atom bomb, And you slowly realize that actually the writer means putting a big pair of, you know, bifocals somehow on this atom bomb, because he hasn't actually realized that when they were talking about putting spectacles on, they were trying to slow down neutrons getting to the right point, so it all got to the right point at the right time. And so they'd be using different grades of metal to sort of slow down the things. These were the spectacles they were talking about. But trying to make sense of this garbage with, you know, thinking back, God, I haven't studied that for 25 years, 40 years. What the hell is that about? Wait a minute, wait. No, this is not a pair of spectacles that they're trying to put on a bloody atom bomb. You know, I guess for me, that moment when I went into the writer's room and I saw them all clustered around the DVD release of Species, and you know they were saying, look, we can take a little bit of that episode there, and we could put that, we can make that work there. You know, this is not what I want to do with my life. You know, and then there was the memorable exchange which went, John, all we want you to do is to be the bad scientist in Lost in Space. Well, guys, now listen, thank you very much, but, you know, if you want the bad scientist in Lost, why don't you employ him? You know, because I'm happy to go. You know, science is too important to me and too important to this country, and clearly there's certainly no scientific mind working on this show. You know, don't do that. Science is important. Scientific minds are pretty damn important as well. You can have fun with science, but don't mock scientists. Then we had that classic one. I said, what is this garbage? Well, we've checked it all out, John. You're wrong this time. I said, you have a pulsar entering the solar system. Yes, that's right. Actually, we're having 3 enter the solar system. And we've checked it with the astronomers, and they say that quasars, pulsars rather, can come in clusters. Well, yes, guys, you could get a cluster. You know, if we're talking about 3 quasars in sort of 1,000 million light years or something like this, but the solar system's a little bit smaller than that. And do you realize? And they spin. That's why we're getting the radiation. Once every 24 hours, this radiation will bathe the planet and kill Earth. Yes. You do realize that the spin on a neutron star, which is what this is a little bit faster. I think at its slowest, it rotates once every 4 seconds. At its fastest, we're talking about millionths of a second. They're very fast rotating objects. Added to which, the word star might draw your attention to something else. This is a body that's about the size of Earth. Yes, maybe a bit smaller even than Earth. But it is the remains of a star. It has a density beyond, equivalent to, or 3 or even 4 times greater than our own sun. Have you any idea what happens to planets when you put another sun or another 2 or 3 suns into the solar system? You know, in the end, you can't deal with people who, there's no cure for stupid. Sorry, we'll go. Sorry about that.
Hi, I am a big fan of sliders, and I'm just wondering what your favorite episode was. And
Probably
the Pulsar
not the
episode?
Pulsar.
This guy has got balls. You must have... I don't know. We started out with such a wonderful premise. And every week we'd get weaker and weaker and weaker, you know, and duller and duller and duller. You know, there's a point at which, you know, you can pay an homage to somebody, but I don't expect to have a conversation with a writer-director saying, you know, look, you know that scene where they walk out on this invisible space and there's an invisible platform underneath them? This is just a little bit of a straight rip-off of a film that I remember doing myself called Raiders of the Lost... Raiders of the Lost Ark, isn't it? And, oh no, I never saw it. You never saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you are producing television. I tell you, the joy of working with those lovely people was great. The crew were great. The directors were very good and very patient with a very stroppy old devil like me. The cast were just pure gold. Loved them. Loved them. And they deserved better than they got. But in the end, every week, some bright boy from NYU or USC would send in a script, and it would land up with me, and I would read it, and I would go to the line producer and say, just read this, will you? It is perfect. It is bright. It is original. The character's right. It doesn't need a damn word changed. And he would take it home, and he would read it, and he would come back and say, yes, it is perfect. And we haven't got a script for next week's episode yet. But the writers will not let somebody else, you know, into the feeding trough. And that, in the end, really stuck in my craw, you know. The bottleneck on successful television in LA, particularly at that time, I think, was, and I hate to say this to any of you members of the Guild here, but the Writers Guild. And the sort of, the close sort of, the exclusion of talent. And if any of you are thinking of writing for television and thinking that you're going to break into television writing in Los Angeles, beware of that. You know, the old-fashioned notion you have that talent and merit and willingness to make the best thing that we can do is way out of date. It's not wanting. What matters is whether when you come onto my show, you know, we'll divide up the spoils, because when I get fired from my show and you get your chance of a television series, I come on your show as a co-writer, co-producer, and let's scratch each other's back. The fact that I've never written, you know, historical drama before makes no difference. I'm sure I can write. So, you know, the fact that I've never actually sort of read a paper on science in my entire life doesn't make any difference, because, you know, I can write science fiction. Anyone can write science fiction. And that grieved me. I mean, the average American child used to watch 14.5 hours of television a week. That doesn't sound very much, but we're talking about an average. That's a huge amount of access into a child's mind and imagination and brain. And you better be responsible when you're doing that. Show them that you know, the possibilities of the universe are endless. Show them wonderful things. Let them dream. And if you do that, you know, you can take home your pay packet at the end of the week and feel you've done a decent day's work. And we weren't doing that. In the end, it was just the stale rehashing of other people's ideas and other people's stories. Sorry about that. Enough, no more. What was my favorite episode? The last one.
Next question, is it sliders?
No. I grew up watching Indiana Jones movies over and over and over again. And also watching the Lord of the Rings movies also. And some of the best times I had were with my father when I was watching those movies. He passed away a few years ago, and last really good time I had with him was we were talking about Gimli. And we watched all the extras, and the part where you wanted to get rid of your beard because of the glue that itched. And I know that is maybe
That's
the
a
worst.
bloody little elf again, you know.
That's basically, I think, the worst part.
Sorry, Dad.
I think that maybe it's the worst part that you had on the Lord of the Rings trilogy is wearing that beard, and it hurt. But what is your fondest memories, either on the Indiana Jones movies or on the Lord of the Rings movies? What is your fondest memory?
Well, let's deal with Lord of the Rings first. Lord of the Rings was very hard to make for me, personally, because it was just physically awful. I mean, I lost all the skin around my eyes. And, I mean, it was a complete skin peel. I have wonderful skin around my eyes now, loves. But I don't recommend the method of acquiring it. And you know, I would go in sometimes and they would look at it and they would say, John, all this is wet lymph on raw meat, and there is no way we can glue the prosthetic to you. You cannot work today. And I would go to the skin man and say, oh, I can solve this, just stop doing what you're doing. Great. But failing that, well, you need at least 10 or 12 days between each application if you're to survive it. Well, that's not going to work either. So if it was Monday and I went in and they said, no, can't use you, I would have Monday off, go Tuesday off, and I would go in on Wednesday, and it was sort of crusted over then. And as they were applying the glue, you'd feel the crust start dissolving and slipping and sliding, and you just want to scratch it to it. So most of my memories of Lord of the Rings are actually blighted by that. The joyous things, obviously my fellow actors. There was only one miserable, spirited bugger on the whole show, and that was me. But they were, I mean, Vigo, wonderful, complicated, creative, magical Vigo. Sean. I mean, Sean, who, you know, that manly sort of figure, you know, who battles it out in the battles of Waterloo and places like that. And there he would be afraid of getting into a helicopter to get to the location. So he'd be off 4 hours before everybody else in the morning, walking up hill and dale in order to get to the location. I met him once. I'd flown in from LA, from New Zealand to LA. I had a meeting in LA and continued to London the following day. And I met him in the first class lounge, and he got in there, and he was covered in bags with a rather confused old lady and old man beside him. And I said, Sean, let me give you a hand. And so I grabbed some bags off him, and I said, are you going to introduce me to these people, relatives of yours? He said, well, I'd love to introduce you to them, but, you know, the truth of the matter is I don't know their names yet. It was just an old couple who were struggling with bags, and they hadn't a clue who he was, and he was just being a decent human being and helping them. Just glorious. So many young talents there that were just wonderful. The glory for me of working on those things is actually working with Tom and Jackson himself. The man has the complete palette for filmmaking. And for those of you who are interested in filmmaking, looking at those extended DVDs that showing you the making of are probably going to save you the whole cost of going to film school, because everything you need to know about filmmaking is there. Probably including how to load a camera. Raiders are different things. We had a spontaneity and fun in Raiders that was... But my most endearing memory is watching them try to blow up or set fire to the flying wing. You know that shot in the desert with the flying wing? So there were quite a lot of shots to be done with the flying wing, so it was pretty important that it didn't burn. So we had the Tunisian fire brigade there, who laid these long snaking lines of water under the desert, covered with the sand over it, so that we get the master shot. We have about 4 or 5 cameras working on this from various angles, and that happens. The Indy and Marion double sprint away from the plane, and then Stephen says, "All right, cut, put the fire out." And immediately the water comes. The only snag is there are so many holes in the pipe that it's going everywhere but coming out of the end of the hose. The desert gets drenched and none gets to the plane, and the fire just burns and burns and burns, and Spielberg is going, "Oh!" Anyway, but just to see it, I think I've even got some still photographs of it that I took at the time. They're a little shaky because I was laughing so much. The fun that you can have in the most absurd circumstances is extraordinary. And over the years, watching Harrison develop from a young star into a major leading man has been it's been a great journey for him, and it's good to watch him and good to know him doing it. I mean, he's a remarkably good and great film marketer, very great. Hope to be working with him, by the way, in the not too distant future. I don't know that I'm allowed to say this, but is no one going to broadcast this stuff on the internet, is there?
We won't say anything.
Cross your heart. And if the girl who took photographs of the Prince Harry is here, leave the room now. But I think it's possible that there's going to be a great show called Flying Tigers made in China in the early part of next year, which is about Chenault. Which is one of the most remarkable and successful pieces of war flying that ever there was. And Harrison will be starring in that. And I'm hoping that I'll get to carry his bags or something like that. Sorry, yes, you're good.
So, looking back about how you acted as Gimli, do you think it might have been easier if you got casted as Denethor in the series, as you originally wanted to?
Well, you see, my theory was this. You know, I'd never been to New Zealand. I've worked in almost every country in the world, really. I mean, Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. No, I haven't got there yet, I hope. But, you know, New Zealand sounded like a good gig, you know. Pop in, do a month or two, go home. No one's going to make a success of this picture. I mean, this little chap in New Zealand who, you know, he's done 2 or 3 small films, you know, but anyone could make a small film. You know, if you've got a 4-hander or a 6-hander, medium budget, decent camera, anyone can direct a film. Good script helps, and he had good scripts, yeah. Yeah, he's a competent young filmmaker, but come on, Lord of the Rings is unfilmable. There's not the slightest bit of filmic sort of continuity in the whole damn thing. No, this is actually going to be a disaster. But it does mean a month or so in New Zealand. Get in, get the money, go home. The blame will not fall on my shoulder when this one fails. Smart move. And then they suddenly start talking about Gimli. Gimli? And you've got all the lies the bastards tell. I'm sorry, I'm a very bad person. And what I mean is the bad people tell lies. One of my bad people is my manager. Darling, I don't want to do it. I've spent 30-odd years trying to be recognized. Now you want to send me away for 3 years and cover my face so that I'm unrecognizable. Added to which, I'm going to spend hours in makeup. Oh, no, you won't, John. I've talked to them. They promised me they'll get it down to no more than an hour. And did I believe her? No, I didn't believe her for a moment. So I was looking for a way of saying no. And then my then agent, who actually is my other manager these days, who had got me the job, said to me, look, John, if you turn this down, I don't think we can continue to represent you. It's that important. And then number one son said to me, Dad, if you turn this down, you'll be nuts. I said, why? He said, think about it. In every bookshop in the reading world, in no matter which country you go into, there's 2 foot of book space devoted to Tolkien. Think of what that means in terms of a potential fan base. And I thought, yeah, he's right. And that's how I ended up doing it. Do I think I'm doing better as Denethor? Not better than the man who played it. All those parts were magically cast. And all those, actually there was one performance in it that wasn't that good in the first, I won't say which, but it wasn't that good. And PJ asked us, and he showed us some screenings and footage, and I stayed behind afterwards and said, PJ, that isn't working. You know, it's too slow, it's too mannered, it's unperiod. And he had the same actor revoice it, and he recut it, and it was magical after that. But the, I mean, just sheer brilliance. Everything about that darn film is as near to perfect as I've ever seen in my entire working life. Sorry, that didn't answer your question. I try not to answer questions. I use the opportunity of a question to start a vamp in whatever direction I feel my brain is taking me. I beg your pardon.
Did you have fun doing the voice of Treebeard?
That was the hardest job of all. I thought, ooh, extra bit of money, jolly good, yes. Cracked Treebeard, yes, another character, no problem, no problem. I lost more sleep over Treebeard than almost any character I've ever played. Think about it. A, he's old. B, he's slow. In the book, it works. You can have a maroon. film actually goes a bit faster than that, you see. So how do you get the slowness and the majesty of the oldest living thing on Earth? Added to which, what does a tree sound like? I mean, apart from rustle and all that sort of thing. I mean, you see, a tree has lungs, as we would say, but not the sort of lungs that we have that makes noise. So how the heck do you get, how do you vocalize when there's no vocal chords or anything like that, and no wind going through those chords? And the more I thought about it, the more upset I became, because I would actually wake up in the night sweating, thinking, I don't know how to do this. And we tried lots of things. We talked fast and then reduced it down slowly until it almost became like whale sound. We speeded it up. I must have done 20 or 30 different versions of it. I still don't honestly think that I got it right. I was in New York, and there was a marvelous radio man there, and I went on his show, and he was a great Lord of the Ring fanatic, and he had 2 or 3 people who were real scholars and really understood Elvish and Dwarvish and were Tolkien fans of the First Order. And he asked them, how would Treebeard sound? The one answer that came back that I remember was, there is only one actor in the world that could do this. James Earl Jones. And you know, he may have had a point. James is a matchless actor, wonderful, wonderful actor. Loved him. I tell him that whenever time I bump into him. But tricky, you see, tricky. Yes. Have I answered anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you all think that John got Treebeard right? Yeah. Sir?
Hi, John. Welcome to Canada.
Thank you.
My name's Armand. I'm actually from Stratford, Ontario, so if you haven't been to the...
Is that something to be proud about?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, very good. Very good. I just wanted to check.
I'd like to actually invite you to check out the Festival Theatre if you haven't seen it yet. 'Cause
In Ontario?
yeah, some real class there.
Well,
William Shatner came out of it.
Well, that's very good. I'd love to go to Ontario. Yes, it's an awfully big country, your country, isn't it? I mean, I know tiny little bits of it, but I've never really travelled it. I have a son of mine who sort of nearly travelled it. He was 17. He said to me, Dad, I want to go camping in Canada. I said, that's a great idea. You know, be careful around about May. They seem to have a lot of fly in Canada and the bush in May and all that sort of thing. No, actually, I want to go now. Now is January. Where exactly were you thinking of going? I thought I'd go to Edmonton, Alberta. You want to live in a tent in January in Edmonton, Alberta. I see. Do you know, it can be a little cold there. Well, it's all right, Dad. I mean, if it's really cold, I'll head further south. I mean, Sioux Falls. I said, in Sioux Falls in February, buffalo freeze in their skins. But actually, he did actually go to Edmonton. He lived in a tent for about a week. Actually, I think he spent more time in the local cafe than he did the tent. But I've never actually done that, but I'd like to do that. And I'd like to take my wife on my little daughter and drive across Canada. I think it'd be rather fun. You're a great country, great people. And without brown-nosing too much, let me say that you're a very intelligent audience and very intelligent people. I've really enjoyed meeting the people I've met today. Very smart, and some very, very smart young people too. So it's a joy to meet you. The best reason for coming to these things is that actors can very easily lose sight of their audience. When you're working on the theatre, the audience is with you every night. You can tell that what you're doing is boring people because they're getting up and walking out. The further you move away into a studio and then into, to television, into film and things like that, the further you get away from the audience, the further you realize what it is that is working for them or not working for them. And the easier it is to lose sight of yourself as well. And the great good thing about these things is that you get to meet extraordinary people who, they just revitalize you. They just, you meet people who've gone through great pain, and you discover that a film that you were part of helped them through that pain. The gentleman who was talking about his father and watching Lord of the Rings with his father. There are Raiders of the Lost Ark with his father. It was Lord of the Rings. I meet people who say, my father took me to see Indiana Jones, and I became a fan after him. And now we are taking my son along to see Indiana Jones when it comes to the theatre. And you realize that there are some films that are just, they resonate for a long, long time. And if you're really lucky as an actor, then once in your life this will happen. If you're really, really lucky, twice. And if you're really as lucky as me, then once a decade, along will come Shogun, Victor Victoria, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Lord of the Rings, Sliders. You've been wonderful. Is it time for me to shut up?
I think we've got time for one more question.
Sure.
Do you feel the pressure, sir? Last question.
I do.
Okay.
Hi, John. My name's Aryan. It's really a pleasure to have you here at the Fan Expo this year. My question is, I was in New Zealand 2 years ago, and I really loved it there. I just wanted to know what area or city you loved the most in New Zealand.
Well, I particularly like South Island, but I think that Auckland is pretty unbearable, to be honest with you. Most of the population of New Zealand lives in Auckland, but to me it's just one continuing traffic jam, a bit like Toronto with the streets down there. But the further south you go, the Wairarapa, and you went to Hobbiton, no doubt, but some of those great vistas in South Island. Queenstown is a lot of fun. That's where those wily little hobbits all agreed that we all had to have a tattoo.
Didn't get one.
The drunken little devil. Well, they came to me. They came to me and said, the full fellowship is all going to have this elvish sign of 9 or whatever it was on them, tattooed. It's agreed. You've got to do part of it. I said, if you think this holy body of mine is going to be pierced by a dirty needle, and I'm going to be tattooed by some drunken Maori for the sake of a film, you are nuts. So I did what any self-respecting actor does when faced with a great physical challenge. I sent my stunt double, and he has it. So, yes, I managed to escape the tattoo. But they all seem to do very well of it. I think one of the great challenges should be one day we get them all together and we force them to reveal where they had the... in public. Eat your heart out, Prince Harry. Anyway,
We're good.
is
Thank
that
you
it?
very much. Yeah.
Listen, you've been marvelous. You're a wonderful, intelligent, and very tolerant audience. I thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to Fan Expo, and thank you for doing this. John Rhys-Davies. Have a great rest of the expo, everybody.